The Northern Territory government has dropped a requirement for interstate travellers to return a negative PCR test. For more on this, let's go live to Matt Cunningham in Darwin. Good afternoon, Matt. What's prompted the change?
Well, Julie, it'll be no surprise to you or your viewers that those scenes we're seeing play out in the eastern states is what's behind this move. Until now, people in the Northern Territory, anyone travelling to the Northern Territory, was required to take a PCR test and return a negative result within 72 hours of arriving. Now, it was inevitable that the change that was made today was going to have to be made. When you saw those huge queues in New South Wales, in Queensland and in Victoria, people trying to get those PCR tests and having to wait hours, in some cases being turned away, that the government here was going to have to change that rule. There were, in fact, businesses here in the Northern Territory today that were unable to open because they had people who were still waiting on the results of PCR tests that had been taken. They were taking more than 72 hours to come back. So Michael Gunner has announced that change. Now you won't need a PCR test. Instead, you'll be given a rapid antigen test when you arrive at the Darwin or Alice Springs airport, or when you arrive by road at the border, and you'll have to show proof of a negative rapid antigen test within 2 hours. So here's Michael Gunner making that announcement today.
Most important message is if you're waiting in a PCR queue down south, get the hell out of that PCR queue. Just come back to the Territory and we'll look after you here.
Meanwhile, authorities have confirmed COVID has spread to another remote Indigenous community.
That's right, Julie. There were 75 new cases reported in the Northern Territory today. Now, one of those cases is in the community of Gumbalunya in West Arnhem Land. It's near the Kakadu National Park. A man has tested positive to COVID-19 in that community. They believe he'd spent some time in Darwin and that he was possibly infectious for several days in Gumbalunya itself. So that is of some concern to authorities here in the Northern Territory. They've asked everyone in Gumbalunya to come forward and get tested. The good news perhaps is that it will be very difficult for the virus to transmit further than Gumbalunya at this time of year. The only way in and out of that community is either by plane or to take your chances across a pretty treacherous crossing that goes across one of the most crocodile-infested rivers in the Northern Territory. So it's a pretty isolated community, but there's still some concern, and we heard from the Chief Minister about that case in Gumbalunya.
Priority in Gumbalunya in the next 24 to 48 hours is to test everyone we can. We have a very well-staffed health clinic on the ground, and we are sending in some additional resources to supplement them. You cannot drive into Gumbalunya at the moment. Kales Crossing is closed. The only way into Gumbalunya at the moment is by plane.
Interesting to hear also in Adam Walters' report just a minute ago about Yvette Darth in Queensland refusing to discuss what had happened in National Cabinet. Well, Michael Gunner was happy to talk about some of those discussions in National Cabinet and the issue about rapid antigen tests and whether they should be free. Now, he said that his view was that if they were required for things such as interstate travel or when people have symptoms and need to know whether they're COVID positive or not, he said in that case his government was happy to pay for those rapid antigen tests. He said he used an example, though, of an instance where someone might be having a party and they wanted to make sure everyone coming was COVID negative. He said in that sort of situation, he said he thought it was reasonable that people would pay for their own rapid antigen test, but he was quite happy to talk about some of those discussions that happened in the National Cabinet.